Hello, I'm Jim Lowry.
And I'm Roxie Roker.
Welcome to Inside Bedford-Stuyvesant. And today, we have our first special featuring Mr. Harry Belafonte, who's visiting us here in Bedford-Stuyvesant.
We would like to tell our audience that we'd like them to write to us and tell us what they think about this program. Write to us at 268 Ashland Place in Brooklyn, New York. This program is being brought to you by New York Telephone, First National City Bank, and Con Edison.
Our special guest today is Mr. Harry Belafonte. But today we're going to interview Mr. Belafonte, not in terms of Belafonte, the artist, the singer, but more in terms of Belafonte, the person, the crusader who for many, many years has been working in the area of civil rights, effectively behind the scenes, and now he's coming out and he's working in front of the cameras, in front of the people, effectively for civil rights once again. Recently, he wrote a very penetrating article in the New York Times where he stated it, got right down to the nitty-gritty, and told the television media what he thought of them, what he thought of their presentation of the black image on television, or lack of that image on television. And I think that this is the way I would like to lead in. First, I'd like to say welcome to Inside Bedford-Stuyvesant, Mr. Belafonte. Nice seeing you again. I guess the last time I saw you was in Puerto Rico with the Peace Corps, right?
That's right, when you were in training there.
Yeah, I was in training. That was a long time ago. You see all these gray hairs, sister?
Did you see mine?
Yeah, I see yours, too. Let's get to that article.
Yeah.
I thought it was an excellent article, very penetrating and very much the point. And I think what bothered you and is bothering me and a lot of other people is this lack of a black image on television. And when we are on television, it's not the image that we want depicted. Is that correct in saying?
That's correct, because I find, for instance, even with this television show that we're doing now, and I'm not here to discredit the efforts on behalf of the men and women that are involved doing it. What I am saying is that I don't understand how the black community here in Bedford-Stuyvesant is going to really and truly get a chance to address itself to itself in order to determine its own inner destiny, whether you call it an inner city or when we're talking about the inner fiber of the human being. When in fact, the entire program has been given $45,000 in which to execute a program over a 26-week period. When it goes on television at 7 o'clock in the morning and at 1 o'clock in the morning, I don't know how the black community is how the black community is going to be capable of responding to what I call this attempt at giving the black community an opportunity to look at itself. And I think these are the very things that frustrate black people, because anybody who views the efforts that are being poured into this television program over the next 26 weeks, the results of this have got to be negative in terms of its impact on the black community which it is supposedly serving. First of all, we have not been able to use this program, from what I have seen, as a platform to hear black people really articulate what they feel. I don't mean just black people that white people want to hear. I mean black people that might even find from their own point of view isn't what they would like to hear, or the talk is too strong. I just believe that from the black community's point of view, we have got to find a way in which to have this medium serve the need of doing two things: having black people express themselves to themselves so they can begin to understand one another more fully, and I think to serve the nation at large so that the nation begins to understand, not through white journals, not through white commentators who have an editorial opinion, but on a first-hand basis to hear what Negro people have to say about themselves and the world around them. And I feel very passionately on the subject because I think that communications is what's needed very vitally. And if we're going to have communications, then let's have it on its most honest level and not on a filtered level.
Because you mentioned in your article that the TV media is actually possibly perpetuating racism and prejudice in the minds of the children of America, because there's phony imagery on television of wide tracking and things like that. The beautiful world, it's not real for many of the people here in Bedford-Stuyvesant of the 400,000 residents.
It's not very real for them. And not only that, when they do use Negro artists, it is always in a caricature of what the white mind has conceived. It's never a picture of the black man or the black woman within the context that is natural to him, that is not around black mythology. It's always around the white abstract concepts of what black people are supposed to be. And in that way, the black community is never able to really see itself. It is, in fact, demanded or asked to aspire towards an image which is terribly false to them, so they reject it. And that's part of the frustration. That's part of the futility.
Now today we're going to have some representatives of the African American Student Association from the Boys High School here address some questions to you. I could ask you questions all day, but I think it would be better because this is what we're talking about, people from the community, how they feel. And if you don't mind, we're going to have them address a few questions.
I don't mind at all.
Okay.
I'd like to ask you, economically, how are you aiding the poverty programs in Bedford-Stuyvesant?
Economically, how do I what?
How are you aiding the poverty programs in Bedford-Stuyvesant as a black man?
Economically, I am not directly aiding the program in Bedford-Stuyvesant as a black man. Spiritually, psychologically, when I address myself as a black man to the needs of black people in any community, I am making my involvement, because poverty in itself is not just a social thing, it is not just a physical thing, it is a psychological thing. Psychological poverty exists. And the only way to eradicate that is for us to be able to have a sense of self within our own community. So that when I look at most poverty programs I've seen around the country, I have refused to relate to them. All the government agencies and all the government programs, because I find that what it is, it's another broken treaty by the white man. He comes in, he mobilizes a black community around the idea of that community's own poverty, and at that white person's own election or that congressional election, they'll withdraw funds, they'll cut off funds, they'll stay, and then when they have left, after they've extracted what they think they want for themselves, the program's been left devastated. Now, I don't know all of the characteristics here in Bedford-Stuyvesant in relation to the poverty program, but I do know about it in other black communities, like down in Dade County in Florida. I've seen it in Detroit, I've seen it in Chicago, I've seen it in
well, you've experienced it yourself, haven't you?
I've experienced poverty myself because I was born in Harlem, I grew up in Harlem, my mother and father was a black man and a black woman, my mother was a domestic and my father was an unemployed seaman.
Do we have another question?
Okay, thank you.
Someone else?
How have you found the educational problems in the country at large as it relates to black people, black Puerto Rican people?
I think that one of the most magnificent struggles that are being carried on now is the great pressure that's being brought to bear by black students and by the black community in behalf of a re-evaluation and in behalf of a stated position which gives black people more control over what goes through the educational facilities in their community. I think that the whole elimination of study of black leaders, of black philosophers, black artists, as part of a curriculum of black students is a crime against black people. Not only does it rob them of a great sense of their own heritage and their own mythology, which is vital and very important, but what it does do is that it creates a sense of inferiority because they're asked all through their educational life to relate only to the white experience, only to the white philosopher, only to the white political individual. And I say that we have black individuals, men in history, not only in past history, but making present history, who black people and black children and black young adults should know about. And I think that much of what was done at Howard University, for instance, was extremely important, morally, ethically, and in the human sense, and in the political sense.
Okay. One short one.
Peace, brother.
Peace.
What do you think about community control, whereby community have a say in education, whereby community have a say of what they want their children to learn, like Swahili, African languages, African culture, whereby they can instill a pride of black pride in young students who are growing up in kindergarten? What do you think about the community saying that they want all of this in curriculum of education?
I think that's vitally important, and I think that a community that does not have a control over its own destiny is a powerless community, not just in the physical sense, not just in the political sense, but in the psychological sense. And I genuinely believe that if the establishment does not want to address itself to the bureaucratic protocol, because we have been through that already. We have gone through all of their avenues of bureaucracy in order to petition for these things. And I think there's a great nobility that the community finds redress for its grievances through mass action.
Okay, we're going to continue.
Lafayette, bro.
We're going to continue the discussion.
Go no
And
commercial.
here's a word from First National City Bank.
Now we'd like to continue our interview with Mr. Harry Belafonte. One more question.
Revolutionary in China said political power grows out of the barrel of a gun. Are you ready to struggle by arming yourself to that extent?
I'm ready to struggle in whatever way genuinely makes sense in relation to the black revolution and black causes. When you address yourself to China, you must understand that China is a nation that is made up of 800 million Chinese. There are no dominating classes or dominating forces that are non-Chinese. The United States of America, although I understand that violence is part of any revolution, I have not yet seen where, on a very practical, political, revolutionary, or other level, that we can readily apply ourselves to the use of guns in order to get redress for our grievances. I've seen no program that permits us to do that. all I've seen, as a matter of fact, in the acquisition of such instruments for our freedom, has been that innocent black people lay down in the street slaughtered. And I think that we have to very seriously give thought to what we would do with guns in relation to the political context in which we find ourselves.